Hello and welcome to the MovieKing Podcast. My name is David Jurmann and I'll be your host. On today's episode, I'm going to review the film Josephine, and in the second half, I'm going to review the movie Solo Mio. So starting off with Josephine, I've been wanting to talk about this movie for a few weeks now. I actually watched it online as part of the Sundance Film Festival, but there was a lot of other stuff I wanted to review the last few weeks, and then I figured since it wasn't going to be released to the public for several months from now, there's really no rush to put out a review immediately, and right now I felt like it was a good time. I mean, I could have waited, I guess, until the movie actually came out, but I want to talk about it now while I can, so I might as well. In any case, this is a big award winner at Sundance this year. It won both the Grand Jury Award and the Audience Award. The last time that happened to a movie was actually Coda back in 2021, and that went on to win the Oscar for Best Picture the very next year. So could that happen to Josephine? Perhaps, but I guess it's too early to say. The film is basically about a young girl who goes out running with her dad one morning and witnesses something terrible that no child should ever see. I will not describe what it is in this review. I think partly for the sake of watching it for yourself and seeing, what happens, but also just the subject matter is something that I don't really feel is appropriate to discuss on here in case anyone younger is listening. But in any case, the remainder of this movie, kind of after that incident, is seeing how everything that happened impacts this little girl. We kind of see it all from her perspective and her point of view, but we also see a bit of it from her parents and how they're trying to help her navigate through all these things and these feelings that she doesn't know, what to do with. She just saw something that she can't describe, doesn't understand, and now she's seeing things differently. She's seeing the world differently, and it's kind of changing her perspective on things. And it presents this very thought-provoking idea of when your child's innocence is stripped away from them, do you try to hold on to whatever innocence is left and possibly make things even worse for them? Or do you continue to cut their childhood innocence short and be very open about what happened in hopes of teaching them a lesson and maybe becoming, more informed about the situation? And it's a very complex issue and one that basically drives the entire movie, and unfortunately is something that I'm sure, maybe not this exact circumstance, but I'm sure this kind of thing happens to way too many kids, given just how crazy the world is and what kind of stuff happens. So it's a really important, kind of movie for a lot of people. I'm sure it is going to be very informative for parents who are going through this kind of thing, or maybe eventually, hopefully, don't have to go through this thing. And I'll say this for now. It's a very devastating movie that hits your heart and frankly terrifies you. I'm not even a parent, but I can imagine that if you are one, this will hit even harder. And in this movie, you do see some very graphic imagery, very detailed graphic imagery. And I think showing everything in full will be a choice that rubs some people the wrong way, just putting that out there. But I understand the choice to do it since it's such a major part of the story being told. And I think to fully comprehend, just what this kid is seeing, we have to see it too. It's a very hard movie to watch. I won't sugarcoat it. It's a very tough movie to get through, but it is very worthwhile. And there are some films I've seen that I like to describe as real-life horror movies. This is absolutely one of them. It's not a horror movie by genre, but it's so unsettling and at times made me scared to even watch that it might as well be. I mean, there's one scene in this movie that was so nerve-wracking of what could happen that my heart was practically beating out of my chest. I'm not even kidding. There was one point where I literally, felt my heart pounding because of how, just how scary this movie gets at times, of what kind of things could happen, the things that this movie goes for and makes you kind of sit through is it's really tough to watch, but it also just really gets to you emotionally and makes you very anxious watching it. And a lot of this is because of some great direction from Beth de Arujo. I hope I'm pronouncing that name right. But her choices will also be a subject of conversation in this movie. The film is a lot less conventional than you might expect. It is a drama, but it tends to lean into visual metaphors and imagery to convey its themes. And some people will find that to be effective, others may be turned off by it. But I kind of expect someone like A24 or Neon to pick the movie up for that reason, since they, that kind of art house storytelling is what they usually gravitate towards. And if you've seen like an A24 or a Neon movie, you kind of know what I'm talking about. Like, it doesn't feel like a very mainstream movie. It feels a bit more like niche, a little more made for, I don't want to say artsy people, but just people who really appreciate visual storytelling, but not in the traditional sense. It's more artistic. And there's this one scene in the movie where we keep seeing something in the young girl Josephine's imagination, and at first I wasn't sure how to feel about it, but by the end, it's probably one of the most memorable aspects of the movie. It's something that really kind of just keeps becoming more effective the more you see it, and it's something that, isn't even in reality, but like it's in this girl's reality, and it's from her perspective, and what you see is just, it really hits the whole thing home to me. It was very effective. The cinematography is gorgeous here. If this movie does get nominated for anything at the Oscars next year, it'll almost certainly be that. The music is very good too. The production design and costume design are very carefully thought out. Like, every choice in this movie was very clearly made intentionally. Even just the clothes people are wearing, like, there's visual representation, of the themes in the clothing themselves. It's a lot of stuff like that that's very intentional. And the script, I would say, is maybe the one part of the movie I have some bigger issues with, but I can't explain a lot of them without going into spoilers, so just for the sake of being spoiler-free, I guess some of it just comes down to the reactions of certain characters not feeling like what a real person might say in these situations. It feels like, a couple times characters just felt out of character, like they were saying something that the movie needed them to say, not what they would necessarily do in a situation like this. But this is a movie where characters also do make the wrong choices a decent amount of the time, and it's not because they're stupid. The more I thought about the whole thing, the less it bothered me, because if you're a parent going through something like this, any choice could feel like the wrong or right choice. I think looking at this as someone who's not going through the situation, you say, oh, that's clearly the wrong choice. But if you are going through it, suddenly these choices become a lot more nuanced and a lot more complex, because, it's like, what do we do? Do we kind of like keep telling this child like what really happened? How do we encourage this kid so that she doesn't like act out and do something bad for herself? Like, a very complicated situation and very complicated choices to make. But I think the movie communicates why the parents in particular think that their choices are the right ones, even if they're not. And they kind of show the disagreements even between two parents of, one person thinks this is the right thing to do, another one thinks the other thing's the right thing to do. It's a very complicated situation. Again, you see a lot of the parent perspectives, but you're also seeing it through the kid's perspective, so you just want what's best for her too. Very well done in all that department. But I also want to mention the performances here. Mason Reeves is good as Josephine. She has to be pretty subtle a lot of the time. You really don't get a lot of emotion or emoting from her. So I don't know if it's like a standout performance per se, but for a child actor especially, she does great. She really did, a good job delivering the lines and showing kind of what she's going through. She did good. And Gemma Chan has some of the most emotional moments in the film. She is really great. This might be my favorite performance that I've seen from her. And then Channing Tatum is also excellent here. It's great to see him leaning into more dramatic roles lately. I really loved him in Roofman, and this is right up there for him too. Everyone just does a very good job. And this is a really good, well-made movie that did impact me, and I'll likely be thinking about it for a while. And it's a movie that honestly kind of keeps growing on me the more I think about it. Like, when I first finished the movie, I was like, that was very good, I liked it a lot. I was like, I'm not completely sure why this won both awards, but I did like it. The more I'm thinking about it, the more I want to rewatch it. And I mean, I don't want to rewatch it per se, because I'm like, very tough movie to get through. But I do want to watch it again and kind of re-examine everything because I think it's a very, very well-made movie. Um, and I can now see why so many people, came away really liking it. Do I think it's gonna be a Best Picture nominee? I'm not quite sure, but I think there's definitely potential for that. Definitely, it's gonna be getting a lot of big reactions from people either way. Like I think, you know, I don't think there's an in between. Like I think you're either gonna really like this movie or you're gonna hate it because it's swinging for the fences. The choices made will absolutely move you one way or the other. So I'm curious to see what people think of this one. Um, I'm really not too sure what the general public is going to say about it, how they're going to respond, because it's a bit artsy and it's also very graphic and disturbing. So it's not a crowd pleaser. But the fact that it won so many big awards at Sundance means it should be a pretty big release when it eventually hits theaters or streaming. I would recommend the film. Just know what you're getting into. I'm going to rate Josephine a B plus. All right, and next up is Solo Mio. So this is an interesting one because I honestly had no plan on reviewing this movie. I wasn't even planning on watching it until right when it came out because I figured it would be just another bad Kevin James movie and a lame rom-com. I didn't even know about the viral marketing campaign this movie's had on TikTok where Kevin James literally like plays his character from the movie and he posted videos. I think he even like posted like a video of his character proposing to, his kind of like wife in the movie, which, is in the very beginning of the film. It's in the trailers, but it's an interesting marketing thing. So I didn't even know about that. But I just saw that this movie ended up getting good reviews. So I decided to give it a shot. I decided to watch it and see if it was actually any good. And I have to say, this is actually one of the better rom-coms I've seen in a while. And I say that as someone who is a bit, more critical on movies in general. So, like, if I see a rom com that I don't really think is all that well made, like, I'm not gonna really love it. So, I'm a little more harsh on movies than the average person. I think that's very fair to say. But I do think this is a very solid rom com. And so many rom coms have a similar formula. And this one's not that different, but it has the charm and the heart and the chemistry you would hope for in one. So, I think that has a lot going for it. The film is about a guy who is going to get married in Rome, but he gets ditched at the altar. So he takes a honeymoon by himself, makes some friends, and then meets a girl there too. And this is definitely Kevin James' best live action movie that I've seen. I mean, I think, like, debatable on what his best overall movie is. I mean, I really like the Hotel Transylvania movies. Kevin James is good in that. He's not the lead, but those are a lot of fun. So this is like up there with those. But in terms of live action movies, this is definitely the best one that I've seen from him. His character in this movie doesn't have a ton of depth, but the things his character goes through feel very relatable and human. He usually plays the goofball who loves toilet humor and getting punched. And here he has to be a bit more vulnerable and allow himself to show a lot of different emotions. And he's not like an amazing actor here. I mean, he's not going to be up for Best Actor or anything, but he does a good job, and I found him to be very endearing, and he did exactly what this role needed him to do. He also has such good chemistry with Nicole Grimaldo, and the two of them together are magic, and if you don't feel anything between those two, then I'm pretty sure you have no soul. That's just honestly the case. Like, they really are good together. I've seen some really iffy rom-coms, and the chemistry isn't great. And I think the romance and chemistry between the two of them in this film is the easy highlight of the movie for me. And that kind of thing is generally like what makes or breaks a rom-com in my opinion. Like if the chemistry isn't good, I may be giving it a bad review. As for the comedy, it's fine. Definitely a step above Kevin James' usual shtick. Like the jokes are a bit higher quality and more thoughtful. There's no potty humor or super lowbrow jokes like that, thankfully. That kind of humor is just like, I mean, sometimes it can work, but like the way Kevin James does it, it's usually not very good. But even so, I would say, even though the movie, like, does have more thoughtful humor, it's just not that laugh out loud funny to me. I smiled a lot, grinned from ear to ear sometimes, I chuckled a bit, but I wasn't finding anything all that funny, like anything all that hilarious, which to some people may matter, but to me it's not a deal breaker. I think, like, as long as the chemistry's good and I'm really enjoying myself watching it, I don't, I'm not like that upset that the comedy isn't that hilarious. Of course, would it have benefited this movie if the jokes were great? Yeah, that movie would probably be like another step above if it was, but it is what it is. And I know I kind of touched on the story before, but it is good. I think a character being left alone is a pretty sad start to a rom-com, but it also makes for an interesting journey, like an interesting character arc of like how is he going to recover and what's left for him, like what is he going to do now? And considering how quickly things need to happen in the story, I liked it. There's also one big plot point in the movie that I didn't see coming, which feels very rare for a rom-com, since they're usually so predictable. Like, most of them, you can just figure out exactly where it's going from beginning to end, and I think there are elements of this movie for sure that just as it's beginning, you can be like, okay, this is exactly what's going to happen at the end. And to an extent, that does happen in this one, but some of the smaller things are fairly unexpected. The movie also looks beautiful. It's shot on location, so you get a lot of great scenery here. My main issues with the film mainly boil down to the way things wrap up. There's one interaction with a side character that, to me, didn't feel very natural to how it really would have happened. Like, I think the best way to describe it is I felt like the movie suddenly became more like a movie, if that makes sense. Like, I'm not against the movie making a choice for how that thing wrapped up. Like, I don't think the choice of how it wrapped up was wrong, but I don't like that in getting there, it made things feel too easy and wrapped up in a bow. Like, it just felt too perfect, a little bit too wrapped up, a little bit, too much just like an easy way out. And I think the movie would have benefited from a bit more of a balanced conversation about things that maybe wasn't so happy, but would have been a little more, I think, impactful and just kind of leaving people with a bit more of a different feeling. I also think the film could have done a better job of visualizing or explaining why the initial relationship in the movie didn't work out. We get a brief idea of what happened in the film, but it's kind of vague and generalized. I think without seeing it happen on screen or just getting like a hint of it in some kind of flashback or something, or even a little more in the dialogue, it just, I don't know, it wasn't as emotional or moving to me. Like, when it happened and we kind of figure out why, I'm like, okay, but, it's not, I think just a little more depth in it would have kind of enhanced it of like, I don't know, I have to be very vague with it all because I don't want to spoil anything. I'm just really trying to give you the basic gist of like what's shown in the trailer, what's kind of the main plot of the movie listed online. Like, I'm really trying to be very careful with details here, but I don't know, I just think we needed a little more information on what happened there. I think the way they do it is very not thought out well. Like, it's just kind of a very brief explanation, and I think considering the entire movie revolves around this thing, it needed to be a little more in depth, just in my opinion, but that's how I felt. And lastly, I'd say the final few minutes of the movie happened way too quickly for me, and I think there easily could have been another few minutes to give a bit more of a proper ending. Like, it just feels like the last 5 to 10 minutes just zoom through everything, and I'm like, what's the rush? Like, we just spent all this time getting here. Like, why are we in such a rush to end the movie? Just a few more minutes really would have helped, I think. Just give it a little more. I'm not saying, like, you had to wrap it up in a bow, but just a little more closure. Just so it feels more like an ending. Because when the movie ended, I kid you not, I was like, oh, it's over? And I didn't even realize that was the ending. So I don't love when that happens. It just feels like, I think like an ending is one of the most important parts to a movie, so when the ending isn't completely satisfying, you leave a little disappointed in some ways. It didn't affect my like viewing of the whole movie, but just would have liked a little more at the end. But I did really enjoy this movie, and I am still very surprised by how much I liked it. It's not amazing, it's not going to be on my top 10 at the end of the year or anything like that, but I had a lot of fun and I would recommend the film. Especially if you're big on rom-coms, you like Kevin James, definitely would say you should check it out. And speaking of top 10 lists, I am still planning on doing one for 2025's movies. I still need to see a few of the Best Picture nominees left, but once I do, I'll get that list out ASAP, so that's still coming. Maybe in another month or so, like around the time the Oscars happen, I should get that out. But fingers crossed I can get that soon. I really do want to see the rest of those films. But anywho, I'm going to rate Solo Mio a B. And that about does it for this episode. If you want to follow my reviews, you can find me on Letterboxd and MovieKing1224. You can also listen to this podcast on your favorite apps such as Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. If you have any comments or feedback, I would love to hear it and improve the show. And of course, if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider liking, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell to hear more like it. I appreciate you all so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.